Welcome back to Football Daily Weekly. And joining us to make up for the complete lack of anyone with any competence on the show, we have Jack
How you doing?
from Talk Norwich City TV. Talk Norwich? Talk
City.
Talk Norwich City. Yeah.
We got there.
It's a great channel.
From the Football Daily Weekly Academy.
Yeah.
So it's time, to sort of bringing the youth.
Bringing the youth through.
Does that annoy you, Jack? When you're young, people go, "We found him," and everyone claims to have brought you
It's a
through.
proud moment.
Yeah.
I think your mum and dad should take responsibility for that.
Yeah. Well, you really should, Patrick. And of course, Patrick's
I'm
very
back,
own.
don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere just yet.
I like how you're in the middle.
Yeah, I know.
Go
yeah.
for the hand.
Thanks very much, mate. Yeah, it's nice. I do like playing in the hole.
What I will say about that's just about your weekend. What I will say about Patrick is he's fantastic in goal on five-a-side football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the goal was tiny, so it did a lot of the work for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you were very much a goalkeeper safe for the cameras
Thanks very
kind
much.
of guy.
I'm available.
Plays in the hole and the goal.
Yes. Yeah. Bayern Munich. It's topic number one this week. Let's get down to it. Bayern Munich are already making history.
They are indeed. Yes.
I mean, technically, that's always what someone's doing. As you move through time, it becomes history.
Yeah.
That is very much the nature of it.
What I think the person who wrote this meant.
Yes.
Was that
Can you interpret it?
They've actually well, yeah, I know he's a very good guy. He's really good money. No, he's what he was trying to say is Bayern Munich have won their first 9 Bundesliga games, which is a record.
Yeah.
And it's alluding to the fact. Do you think this Bayern Munich team can make history and says could they be the best Bayern Munich team ever?
Do you actually think they are the best Bayern Munich team?
I mean, the thing we've seen this season is they've sort of won a sort of varied games, haven't they? They beat Werder Bremen at the weekend 1-0, but they've also thrashed teams as well, which shows they're capable of performing different sort of tactical routines, really. And the fact they've got Lewandowski firing on all cylinders is a massive help. But there's been some cracking Bayern Munich teams in the past, so they've got such high expectations on themselves that they have to keep beating them. But under current form, then you could say they're off to a good start, aren't they?
I think it's a bit depressing. I mean, there's a depressing element to the fact they beat probably one of their nearest rivals, Borussia Dortmund, the other week 5-1, which means the tournament's basically sewn up before Harvest Festival.
Yeah. Which I believe when they put the marker down in Germany. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you've got Thomas Müller who's scoring 9 goals in 9 games, and let's say Lewandowski didn't even need to score,
exactly.
and they can run over. However, they probably do have a chink in their armour. I do think they defensively they can be got at. I think once you get put behind Alonso and Vidal, I think they're back 4. They might have some
But they're scoring so many goals, aren't they? Then does it
it
really matter?
Isn't that the problem? Is it sort of once you get past Alonso and Vidal, they go, well, it won't happen a second time.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I think maybe the real test for them is in Europe, which I think we'll get to later on in the week.
Yeah.
But
Tune in.
so to make sure you tune in for that one. But yeah, I think they can be got at, but not in the Bundesliga. I don't think there's anyone really going to try.
No, I agree.
Do you think
so? In Europe, basically.
Did we say the same about Pep's side at Barca? And we sort of said this is the peak, and then it went a step further. But do you think Pep's maybe learned some lessons from Barcelona?
I think he must have done, because he didn't get everything right in that Barcelona team. Like pretty much everything.
Pretty close.
But I mean, the great teams always look to improve on pretty much perfection. So I think Pep's a fantastic manager, and he's doing good things at Bayern Munich. But he would have obviously taken lessons from Barcelona. And Bayern Munich possibly aren't the perfect side this year. They need to make a few improvements. As you said, in Europe, they need to sort of really pick up the game. But they're on their way, aren't they? It's a fantastic team.
Do you think it's the mix of Pep Guardiola and the culture that was already at Bayern? And Bayern's almost... They weren't completely open to completely changing, but they said we need to go a step further than we already are, because they knew maybe some of their deficiencies would take them behind in certain parts of Europe.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that they'll be judged on whether he wins a treble, wouldn't he? Which is,
it's really frustrating.
So we're talking about this as really sky-high kind of expectations there. I mean, I think they should be a shoo-in really for a double this year in the German club. Yeah, I think there's some other good teams in the Bundesliga. I think there's be some good games to watch. Wolfsburg, I think that Max Kruse got a couple the weekend as well. So they look good. I think Germany will have a good representation in Europe, but I think it's a one-horse race, isn't it?
Yeah, the pull in Bundesliga isn't necessarily the winning of the league.
Yeah.
Although a few years ago it really did that, like the diversity with Dortmund and now Wolfsburg coming up, and a couple of other sides as well, really putting the boot in to kind of say we could come third. Sterling, is it strong in Europe anymore? What's the pound doing against the euro? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think what he meant here was Raheem Sterling.
Raheem Sterling,
impressive first senior hat trick against Bournemouth, which he never managed for Liverpool.
Yeah. Probably normally because how many people actually scored a hat-trick in recent years for Liverpool, apart from Luis Suarez?
Yeah,
not many. But when you look at the way that he scored his goals this weekend, there's a very Raheem Sterling-esque element to those goals. The way he moved through the team,
absolutely.
It was almost the reason they bought him. Do you remember that goal against City that he scored, where he shifted one way, then shifted the other, and he made a load of space against Joe Hart? There was a similar goal against Bournemouth this weekend for that reason.
I love watching him play when he is drifting and floating, just out
literally.
wide. I'm going to make a very flattering comparison here because I saw both the City game and the Barcelona game, and there was which we will get to. Neymar scored for Barcelona. But there was a similarity in terms of the goals that Sterling scored. They both showed technical ability that you were just saying, and all kind of a striker's nous as well. So it was a sort of it was a real kind of completeness to his game there. And it's also it's quite an ominous signal of the strength and depth Manchester City have because there's no Silva and Aguero, and they can still rack them up.
I think that's a big point, is the strength and depth, because he never really had an incredible team around him at Liverpool. I mean, it was a good team, but not up to the standards of Manchester City, and that gives him that ability to, and freedom to sort of roam and float around, and that's what the best wingers do. They're not set to that designated position. They're not always running down the wing. It's really hard to keep.
What is he though? I mean, that you call him a winger, and that's where he's come from. But he's been played through the centre for City, and he's also been played as almost a striker.
I mean, I look at Raheem Sterling. I think he's like a typical winger, isn't he? He's short.
What do you look at when you see Raheem Sterling?
I see a young man making his way in the world.
Yeah.
God, that was deep.
Not unlike Talk Norwich City's Jack Reeve.
Anyway, sorry, we cut you off. Jack, what about that? Because it's what do you see when you see Raheem Sterling?
I think he is a winger. I like Raheem Sterling, the way he plays, and he's so quick, he's so technically gifted that I don't think. When I watched him at Liverpool, I haven't seen him too much at Manchester City, but he wasn't a fantastic finisher, was he? That was always the point that people brought up.
Yeah.
And I think as a striker, you always need, obviously, a good finisher there. But I think Raheem Sterling, he can create his own goals. And even if he misses a couple in a game, that isn't too much of an issue. But if he is just playing straight through the centre, I think you take out his best bit of his game, which is his ability to run at players, his ability to move in and create goals as well, which is what Manchester City needs at the moment.
Well, absolutely. And just to sort of further that point about what the strength and depth in them, without Silva linking up with Aguero, they've actually got a pretty solid plan B, because you've got the muscle there with Boney. He scored 2 the weekend as well.
Great.
And
he looks
and it's for someone who isn't playing regular football. Do you know what I mean? To come on and look that sharp is genuinely really impressive.
That's what they bought well in over the past year. And there you really got to congratulate Pellegrini, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because he apparently identified Sterling as the number one target. That's why they went so vehemently after him. And then they spent pretty big money on Boney as well for what he was at Swansea.
Oh, well, I think you say what he was at Swansea, but whenever you've seen Boney, he has impressed. When you pick up, go to the better teams, you're always going to be scoring more goals. Boney was a fantastic player at Swansea.
Yeah.
Such a typical Premier League player. He's big, he's strong, and he can finish as well. When you put him in that Manchester City team with the like of Sterling around you, he's going to score goals. And he's so different to Aguero as well. When they want to take a plan B, he is the player to use because he plays so differently to Aguero.
Isn't that interesting, though, looking at the way that things have changed at City and maybe even a couple of other clubs in just a few years? A few years ago, we saw people going to City and it was kind of, right, well, now you prove yourself to us.
Yeah.
Now it seems if the players are going to City and it's like validation. It's like, oh, I am here. Whereas a few years ago, it was like, well, Sinclair, maybe we'll move you out. Now, Jack, let's move on to point number 3. Sorry. Newcastle at the weekend absolutely smashed Norwich. What looked like a championship side, if we're being brutally honest.
It looked like basketball beach football.
Yeah.
If that makes it like beach football with
that
basketball
is a sport.
rules.
Yeah, isn't it? What were your conclusions on that one? Because, conceding 6 any time is terrible.
Yeah. Well, when you make a 7-hour coach trip, you want to see goals, but maybe not 5 goals in the first 30 minutes. By the first 30 minutes, Martin Olsen already had 5 assists, created both of ours and all 3 of theirs.
Super Sunday.
I think Sky genuinely said to us, look guys, this is a terrible match on Super Sunday. We've made a mistake. Don't defend. Let's try and make it as entertaining as possible. Yeah. But both teams kind of took that to an extreme.
Take that, BT Sport.
Exactly. A complete inept defensive performance from both teams. And I think
that's what I love.
Newcastle
It's just an outrageous amount of space for both teams. I think there was
it looked like a championship.
And I think McLaren McLaren did try to fix it, but I mean, it was I think someone.
He did. They won 6-2.
Well, he did fix it. Okay, but they kind of the amount of space between the attack and the defence for Newcastle. There was all sorts of, and you had a lot of joy with Olsen down that left-hand side, and it looked like
bring on Mike Williamson. The crowd chant every night.
I think the brilliant thing about this is there's 5 goals after 30 minutes. We go into half-time 3-2. So both managers take off their defensive midfielders and just try and throw players on to get even more goals.
On the feature board.
It was just one of the strangest games. Neither team knew how to defend.
It's bloody entertaining.
I suppose it was for the neutral. But the first half, I couldn't stop laughing. It was just embarrassing.
Really?
They at St James's Park, they really farm you up. You're up in the gods, aren't you? Very much so. There was this sort of a big yellow contingent up there, kind of in the binoculars.
And that kind of makes it worse because we could see exactly where we were going tactically wrong.
Oh, really?
We were throwing. You said we were having.
That's not something you should.
Jack wasn't throwing.
Away fans should not be throwing.
We were throwing Martin Olsen forwards a lot, where we got all of our joy.
God, that's painful.
He got our 2 assists, but we also have to remember that most of their goals came down that side. So it was literally just chucking men forward, and it was like a terrible Sunday league game.
Why play? So my question would be: if Olsen's so far forward, why play such wingers? Because Redmond was out there as well, and it's credit to him, he got his goal. Yeah, but at the same time, why are you throwing Olsen forward when you have wingers who are clearly supposed to be providing something?
Yeah, I mean, we usually play Brady at left back and Matty Jarvis down the left wing, which is really done well for us this season, but we switched up, which I'm not too sure why, and played Olsen at left back, who hasn't played much football this season except for Sweden on international duty, and played Brady out on that left wing, which he was dropping back quite a bit and losing himself in the game, which meant Olsen had to get forward to create any kind of attacking flair, which then meant we had a massive gaping hole at the back.
And you got West Brom next, is that right?
Which is huge. We've gone from being really confident and
6 pointers.
And looking really good, and quite a way off the bottom. We're now 3 points off the bottom with West Brom coming up. If Newcastle and Sunderland win, that means we could go into the bottom 3, and everyone's looking at.
I think they'll be all right. I think there's worse teams in the Premier League than you at the moment. And again, you play very good football. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's to your detriment, like this weekend. Yeah. So
let me pose this question to you: why Naldum?
Why Naldum? Why not?
Dum.
Yeah. 4 goals, fantastically taken. They scored. The problem is they scored 2 identical goals, didn't they? Yeah. Basically, coming in on that, they had a lot of joy on that right hand side. They get the Olsen space, basically hitting the goalkeeper at his far post, and it was just like amount of space in the penalty area, like you say, belongs in the Championship.
Yes,
I think the thing is as well,
which you don't. I'm not saying Norwich belong in the Championship. I think
you can't just Norwich.
You can't just blame our defence either. They had 6 shots and scored 6 shots on target and scored 6 goals. I mean, you have to be looking at John Ruddy in that situation.
Fair enough.
I mean, to be fair to Ruddy, the final Wijnaldum goal was not something I think any goalkeeper saves.
Yeah, he was rooted to.
But he let one underneath him, and I think one on his near post. And you just look at it and go, if he would have saved a couple of them, we scored our other chances. But I think I'm clutching straws there.
Yeah, Barcelona aren't missing Messi. Is that true?
I think, here's the question. If Messi was playing, would they have scored 4 more goals and it would have been 9-2? Not necessarily. I think it's testament to the system they've got at Barcelona. Do you know what I mean? Messi is an outstanding, probably the best player in the world. However, the system can, it shows that Barcelona's system can incubate an injury like that and still score a phenomenal amount of goals. Neymar scored 4.
Against who?
Rayo.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the thing is that's they're always going to get big scores in the league, aren't they?
But look at that as a formation. I mean,
we'll get that up on the screen.
You've still got
it's not great.
Look at that as a formation. No, but look at Suarez. They've still got Suarez in there. They've still got Neymar in there. They still have Rakitic. I mean, but there are a couple of names that are less recognisable to people who aren't necessarily at Barcelona. They've got Roberto in there. There's obviously
Munier, I think,
as well.
Played well. I think,
probably
and Rakitic as well. Again, played very, very well. He's very underrated in my opinion. Not underrated, but he's not one of the stars. I think, but having said that, I think Neymar scored 4 excellent goals, and as again, what the comparison to Sterling was that it was a variety of goals as well. So 2 very well taken penalties, sort of short step psychological penalties, just outfoxing the goalkeeper. 1 very kind of instinctive striker's goal as well, and a thumping finish. So I think just a great all-round play from Neymar, and I think it's testament to Barcelona's system that they can take the impact of losing Messi and they can still rack up scores like that.
It's a great system when you can just buy someone really good.
I mean, the best thing about this game was very similar to Newcastle against Norwich, just at a slightly higher level.
No, I agree.
But
so you're Rayo, are you, Norwich?
Pretty much, yeah. Just terrible challenges all over the park. But Neymar should have really had 4 penalties in that first half.
Yeah.
He was unlucky. I think that's the whole stigma of diving sometimes comes into the equation. None of them were dives. It was just his pure ability and Vallecano's slight ineptitude of defending.
Yeah, I think like Barcelona, they have the most amount of penalties in Europe out of anyone this season. But I think that's just because they have world-class technical players with low centre of gravity.
Fast players.
Fast players who basically keep the ball at their feet and attract more challenges than other players. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think there's any more or less play active.
The thing is that none of them were really that bad challenges. The
Did
play
you see
was
the
just
second
so
one where he
quick.
just really cynically stuck out his back leg? Like, what are you? Just let him go past. Oh, well, no, actually not. Maybe.
I'll tell you a player who impressed me, not for Barcelona, but Bebe for Vallecano, looked incredible down the left-hand side, provided the cross for their first goal.
I mean, the other thing with Barcelona is they've conceded 11 goals in 8 games, and they conceded 0 goals at this time last year. So we're talking about the likes of Manchester City and potentially Bayern Munich being vulnerable there. Barcelona definitely are. They definitely shipping goals at the moment.
It's to their detriment as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a different style of play they're playing, isn't it? I mean, just literally throwing men forwards. You could see that from
the counter-attack.
You could see that from the off that they weren't really too bothered about defending too well.
Against Vallecano, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because what have you got against Vallecano?
I
nasty comments.
There's a journalist I spoke to not long ago, and he literally went, "Which pig farmers are Barcelona playing this week?" Oh. And I think that. It sounds disrespectful, but when you look at the difference between the two, I mean, it's
rude, but it's accurate.
That's the problem. Is that it's difficult when you point those things out. It almost feels disrespectful.
Sorry,
to those
any
guys,
Rayo fans out there, but they're not normally in the comment section, are they?
But the point would be with that.
Is it a nice place to go on your holiday?
Vallecano.
Yeah, I mean,
Spain is.
So visit Spain.
Yeah. What I do think about that is though they can afford those differences. You know, there is such a difference in institution between Barcelona, and I know they've built themselves up to be that. But you'd argue that because they're two financial, it's not unusual that the two financial centres of those places are the biggest clubs in the country.
Yeah. And also, they're representative of Spanish history. Do you know what I mean? They're the two political blocks.
History in a way.
Catalan history, of course. And read more about the revolution in the 30s. Very interesting.
Which they do still talk about, obviously.
Yeah,
so
of course. Overthrowing of the socialist government by General Franco.
Yeah.
From Madrid.
Yeah.
Goodness sake.
Moving on, Jurgen Klopp is in England.
Did you enjoy your first game under Klopp's helmsmanship?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
I think he was. I think that he more, in a way, he'd kind of tapped out about 70 minutes. I think he'd recognised that Liverpool haven't had a clean sheet since that game in late August against Arsenal, which was a freak result anyway. And I think he said, do you know what, we're not going to concede here. And that's progress of a sort.
In one way, also, the Opta Joe pointed out the weekend, though, who's the goalkeeper with the most clean sheets in 2015 in the Premier League? Simon Mignolet.
Is it really?
Yeah, isn't that unusual?
But then, how you've let it go like every week?
But then you'd still say, well, yeah, but that's 2015 though, isn't it? They've still got a whole of the previous season.
Right, okay. Where you've manipulated that, you've confused
I think
me.
Opta Joe have manipulated that.
If you're angry at anyone, be angry at Opta Joe.
Be angry at the statsman. But what I would say about that is that shows that Liverpool do have an ability to keep clean sheets.
Yes.
Maybe when the pressure's on them, that's when they don't have the ability to keep clean sheets. They didn't in the past.
Kane were pretty terrible though. I thought
do you think Origi was bad?
I didn't
actually,
I think
as a fifth choice striker, you'd say.
Yeah, I don't think he's had the best of games. I mean, Klopp came out the first 20 minutes and it was almost classic Jurgen Klopp. It was very, very high intensity, pressuring on the turnover and all that sort of business. I'm not sure Liverpool at this moment can sustain that for 90 minutes, and that's probably why.
No.
So,
Adam Lallana, there's a picture here in the newspaper and pretty much everywhere of Adam Lallana falling into Jurgen Klopp's arms. Yeah. Because it's sort of like, don't make me do it again. You know?
Yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily for the rest of the season. I think, fitness levels improve. You've got a lot of players that are injured. It'll be very interesting to see how Benteke does as that defensive striker. Do you see what I mean? Closing down.
Do you think
players.
though one of the interesting things is everyone was sort of saying, well, James Milner won't fit this. This guy won't fit this. And actually, people were even saying
for ages. I mean, he's always had a raw deal in the press about him being an agricultural footballer and that sort of stuff. And he always seems to sort of come out the other ends, into Liverpool, Manchester City.
Klopp called him a complete footballer.
I think James Milner was quite lucky not to get sent off at the weekend. There was a few.
Same for Lucas. Same for Chan. Same for a few Tottenham. But I think there were quite a few clashes between players. That'll go well in the sound.
You could tell that it wasn't. The Liverpool players obviously aren't used to this sort of setup, and they were throwing some rash challenges in, mainly because they were having to work so hard.
Because they were tired.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that Lallana picture is great because he didn't get through the whole game. I don't think he hasn't played a whole game for ages, has he?
No.
But it just shows that Klopp's brought something different. I think that's what Liverpool needed, to switch things up, play high intensity. And I think the brilliant thing about Klopp is the encouragement he was giving his players. I think Origi dragged the shot wide late on, and it looked like he'd just scored because he was going wild. He clapped the fans at the end, which was brilliant, and it just brings a whole new energy to the team that I think is massive for Liverpool.
Doubters to believe.
It's interesting, like JJ Ball, who's been on this show before, he did an amazing piece in the Telegraph, which was about the gegenpressing and all that sort of stuff. And weirdly, at the point he made, that was something Rodgers was trying before with Suarez, and basically gave up when Suarez left. So it's not something that's completely alien to Liverpool, but it's the point I was making earlier. Just I don't think they're physically ready for it yet, but they're going to have to learn it pretty quickly. It's also you've got injuries and things like that.
Well, if you look at Liverpool's bench over the weekend, you see Sinclair, you see Teixeira, you see
Jordan Ibe came on.
Ibe came on. He was told off for not getting changed fast enough. I don't think particularly terribly.
Cultural revolution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that was the interesting thing. Is also I think I made this point on a number of shows, but it was if Klopp went out to look at the pitch like every other manager does before the game, then journalists don't write, he went out. They note that. They don't note when other managers go out to look at the pitch. They went, Klopp surveyed the grass, And that's the weird thing, is that already people are talking about him as if it's something completely revolutionary. That was the Football Daily Weekly, wasn't it?
It was indeed, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was.
Wasn't it?
What a great Football Daily Weekly it was.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say
it was
a Football Daily Weekly, wasn't it?
Wasn't it?
It was. It definitely was.
In many ways, it was.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below what you think the highlight of the weekend was. Was it Klopp? Was it indeed Pochettino just very quietly doing what Jurgen Klopp does loudly?
Or was it Martin Olsen's defending?
Yes.
Martin Olsen, yeah.
Probably
not. Martin Olsen is more than welcome to comment below.
Yeah.
Just sort of, defend is defending.
Yeah. I want to see a Divock Origi account created. Anyway, it's been lovely to have you guys. It's been lovely to have you as well, Jack. People head over to talk Norwich City.
Yeah, do.
They can get rants from the weekend and hopefully some more optimistic stuff going into the West Brom game.
Who's your favourite Norwich player?
Martin Olsen.
Nice save of all time.
Yes.
Of all time. Martin Olsen.
Brilliant. Not Simeon Jackson.
Jackson's a legend, isn't he?
Yeah.
The goal against Derby just...
Pacheco,
another great player.
What about that heady UEFA Cup period you had in the early 90s?
Jeremy Goss,
yeah.
I love you, Jeremy Goss.
Yes. Of course, one of Big Brother's runners-up, Goss, back in, I'd say, the early 2000s. He became a chef. Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Delia as well, of course.
Delia, bringing back so many good memories now.
Really are, right? Yeah. And then, of course, the previous host of QI.
Stephen
Mr. Fry.
You've got some heavyweights down
We
there.
have.
Yeah,
he's a big guy.
No, I mean, intellectual heavyweight.
Yeah.
And he's just a big celeb.
Yeah, big on Twitter. Give him a follow. Anyway, it's been lovely to have as well. What else can people see when they head over to our channel?
Plenty more, even more of this.
More comedy?
Yeah, there'll be some, we'll be doing some Champions League previews coming up this week. So, see with it.